Hello, I'm Wayne Maguire and welcome back to Property Success New Zealand, where each week I bring to you the real estate experts and they share with you their insights on what's happening in the market. And this week we have our regular Pat from the Property Press, who will explain to us the motivation people have when they are buying rental properties. And Ben from New Zealand Herald with a cheeky discussion about when cheap actually costs you more. Our expert of the week is Daniel from Loan Market, with his tips for buyers on how to win at auction. And this week I'll share with you some tips to help you bid and buy at auction. And our salesperson of the week is John Howard. With 20 years of experience, it's certainly going to be interesting to see and hear what changes he has seen. That's all on Property Success New Zealand today. Well, joining us again is Pat. Pat, you're a regular contributor to the program. Welcome back again today.
Lovely to be here, Wayne.
And Pat, I think if we pick up where we were last time, we were talking about residential buyers and where they see affordability. How has your research given us an indicator on that, Pat?
It's clearly pointing, Wayne, to affordability being a major worry. It's a major issue nationally, not just Auckland, but right across New Zealand. Affordability is an issue, with just under half of all of the adults surveyed citing affordability as an increasing issue to them.
Right across the country. I'm surprised because certainly in Auckland, you know, we know where the prices are, but that's across the country now also.
It is, right across New Zealand, but Auckland is striking though, in that 72% of Aucklanders think that the prices are too high. And interestingly, 41% said that they thought prices were above true value.
Wow, that's substantial. I wonder if that ties in, because I've just spent 2 years, not every property, but the majority, actually selling the properties at auction above the reserve price. So what does that mean? That means we've actually sold more than the owner even thought the property was worth. So that ties in, doesn't it?
Certainly it does. And again, I suppose we could consider that's one of the great advantages of auctions.
Absolutely, yeah. Don't show your hand. If there's more there, take it.
A better result. To drill down into the numbers, 29% of respondents thought that properties in their area were unaffordable to them.
Wow. 17%
couldn't afford to buy in their area, so presumably they're currently renting or they needed a different type of property. And 19% of respondents thought they couldn't even buy something in their preferred location.
Wow.
So it's an issue for people, and that's pretty clear in the research.
It's becoming pretty tough, isn't it?
It certainly is, yeah.
And you pick up there, people are renting in certain areas, and again with those, the tenants or the people that are renting, or in the landlords in their case with the properties they've got in the market. I think last time we looked at Wellington, how strong that market was in Wellington. Again, data that you've got in the background there, does it tell us much about what people are thinking with their investment properties, say in Wellington?
Well, Wellington, there's a striking case. We saw it on the graph last week. Wellington City is a preferred area for people to buy residential and investment property. Now, what we think is the Wellington folk are more focused on capital gain, and we'll get to capital gain in a minute, but they are the ones that were outstanding in their focus on capital gain, and we think that Wellingtonians think there's some upward movement coming up pretty soon in the property values there. But despite all the national anecdotes about people being in residential rental property to make a quick buck, fewer than 2% of buyers in New Zealand of rental properties are focused solely on capital gain. We come up to 19% where the respondents say it was only or most important factor, the capital gain, but the other 4/5 of respondents are focused mostly on yield. So it's an income for them. And remember, a few programs ago we looked at the Manawatu properties being advertised in Auckland for people looking
with those
at yield.
great yields on the, you know, when we looked at those numbers were fantastic.
So 4/5 of the buyers have got yield as a significant factor in their buying decision.
So only a very small group that is thinking it's only capital gain that I'm doing the property for. They may be thinking to hold and then flick. Most are in the middle with a mix.
2% nationally, or less than 2% nationally, just for a quick flick.
Yep.
It comes up to 4% in Auckland, where perhaps there are opportunities for a quicker,
Turn it over.
a shorter transaction time, although again the legislation now might put a stop to that
Absolutely.
too.
The government's
So,
jumped in there. Yeah.
But it's even though it was still only 4% in Auckland.
Okay,
So,
okay, cool. And then at the other end, you'll have people that are just thinking about the yield, what the income is off the
right.
property while they're
Yep,
holding it. Yep.
Absolutely. And
Yep.
then if there's some capital gain, good-o.
Yep.
But their main focus was on yield.
Yep. Fantastic. Very, very interesting, and it's fascinating to sit here in Auckland and think about what's happening in the Wellington market.
Yep.
That affordability, boy, we all just know that's such an issue in New Zealand. And again, as we look into those auctions, even the owners were thinking these are selling for more than they should, or more than they thought they were worth. So,
Exactly, yeah.
but they were still happy to take it.
Yep, I'm sure. Minimum resistance from a vendor.
Yeah, exactly. Pat, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Pleasure, Wayne.
Great
Lovely
again.
to be here.
Thank you. Well, back with us now is Ben from the New Zealand Herald. Ben, welcome back.
Thanks for having me again.
Ben, look, we've worked hard and we've covered off some really good material. We've spoken about the carousel. People are aware of that. We've spoken about the editorial, the value of the editorial. We've spoken about online and we've spoken about print. I reckon we should do something cheeky.
Yep.
Because we are both, to a degree, on the outside looking in because we don't list and sell houses, but we deal with a lot of agents. I'll deal with them as an auctioneer and you'll deal with them as you watch those campaigns.
Yep.
Now, maybe we blur our faces out so the agents can't get us afterwards, but what are your observations when you look in at agents and vendors as they go through the process?
Yeah, hey, it's a good question, and please do blur my face. But probably the biggest thing or the saddest thing for us is when people do try cut corners. It is a
Yeah,
discount
okay.
mentality for Kiwis.
Yep.
And people might try get the cheapest agent, they might try get the cheapest marketing campaign, but then they come back to us, say 4 weeks later, and go, we didn't sell our house and we're ready to spend money now. And that's really hard for me because we're going at the start, hey, you should get the best agent,
Yep.
you should get the best marketing campaign, because you've only got, 3 or 4 weeks?
Go for 4. Certainly if you're
4
in
weeks.
Auckland, stick to 4 weeks because I
Yep.
reckon out of 4 weeks, 1 week's going to be raining
Yep.
or the sun's going to be out and everybody's off
Yep,
running
true.
around. So the rest of the country, I don't know, your weather's better, I suppose. So stay at
Yeah.
3, but 4 weeks, yep.
Yeah, so you've got 4 weeks to tell everyone in the world that your property at number 1 Frank Street in Tatatu is
Yep.
for sale. And
Fantastic.
you want everyone to know about it. So it is hard when we, when we have people coming to us wanting to spend the least amount of money and the least amount of money on an agent, and they're going to get what they pay for,
Quite often when we've had somebody who's the developer putting a property on the market, I see them do the same.
Yep.
They'll spend a lot of money on the fit outs, a lot of money on the quality of the finish, but they'll skimp on allocating a budget, a sufficient budget to maybe the marketing on the property. Yeah?
Yep.
Or, as you say, they're looking for the agent that's the cheapest.
Yep, and that's like, through my role, I've got 2 non-negotiables, and I've told my wife when we sell a house, it's marketing and an agent. And with what you're talking about marketing, that's a non-negotiable for me
Yeah,
now.
sure.
Like, I understand the benefit of it, and I'd happily put, say, 1.5% to 2% on marketing
Yep.
to, get all those different buyers, whether it be passive or active.
1.5%, 2% of the property's value
Yep.
as a thumbnail calculation. If it's worth X, 1%, 2%, that's what you'd spend in marketing.
Yeah, so our property where we are is probably around the 600,000 mark. So I'd probably happily put between $6,000 and $9,000 into marketing.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yep.
Amazing, because if you think about the skill of, say, auctioneers or negotiators, our hands are tied and we're no good to you if there's no buyers there, if there's no bidders there, and you've got to cast that net pretty wide to get people in, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the whole thing. Like, if you're going to, spend $1,000 on your whole marketing campaign, you might only have one person bidding
Yeah,
at your
absolutely.
auction.
Yep.
And it's what we've spoken about in the previous weeks, that when you do cast your net wider and you've got 2, 3, 4 bidders, you get
Fantastic.
that. You pay for your marketing after one bid,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And then you've seen the same as I have. You've seen people that have had a marketing campaign that's been unsuccessful. Now they go the full noise. But in fact, if they'd sent, I don't know, say they spent $1,000 on the first campaign,
Yep.
the second campaign could have been far stronger if it had the $1,000 built in, as opposed to wasting that money to start with.
Absolutely, and
Yep.
there is like I've met some vendors. On the odd time I do meet vendors, and I remember one vendor saying to me, "Oh, Ben, I don't actually care. I don't care if it's on the market for 6 months." But for us, coming from an advertising background, we do care, because if there's a property advertised for 6 months, or 6 months later, as a buyer, you're going, something's obviously wrong with that property. It's been on the market for 6 months. People have obviously done their due diligence, and there's something wrong with it. And you don't want to be that property that something is wrong with it. You want to get it done in 3 or 4 weeks, like we've said, and get it out the door.
It's interesting because I look at properties, say, outside of Auckland and in some of the holiday areas, and the number of views and the length of time it's been on the market does become counterproductive for the owner.
Yes.
At a certain point, you're thinking, okay, it's a normal property, it's attractive.
Yep.
After a certain point, when you can say on some of the onlines, look at how many hits it's had, you think, this one's now stuck. So counterproductive at that stage. Just quick thoughts, and it'll sound like we're protecting agents' commissions, but you'd be the same as me, I guess. We see good agents and bad agents, and the difference is not on who's the cheapest agent.
Yep. Oh, and we've got a fantastic quote: "Good agents aren't cheap. Cheap agents aren't good."
And good.
So, if you want to get the cheapest agent, well, you might not get the agent that's going to negotiate hard for you at the end of it, which is important. Like, if an agent straight away is going to cut their rates by half or whatever, you've got to put that in question at the end of your campaign. You might feel good at the start going, yes, I'm only spending X amount on my agent and X amount on my marketing. But when you come to the end of the 4-week campaign and you don't get what you wanted, suddenly those good feelings disappear very fast,
Yeah, absolutely. Now look, say the commission rounds out at 3%, then what I've always thought when I've looked at the owner is you're making the decision on who to sell with based on 3%. Why don't you make the decision on the 97%, which is who's going to be the best at getting the most out of the property.
Yep.
Well, there you go. I think we've survived. I don't know if we're going to have those faces blurred or not, but we'll just keep an eye out for agents so we don't get ambushed in the street now.
Hey, great.
Cheers,
Thanks,
Ben.
mate.
Thanks, mate. Well, Daniel, welcome back. It's great having you here representing Loan Market as a broker.
Thanks, mate.
Daniel, if we think about all the auctions, and that's a prominent method of sale, how are you preparing people for auctions? What should they be doing before they arrive
Sure.
and I get to deal with them?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the auction thing can frazzle people a little bit, and they do get very nervous and
accept that.
unsure.
Yep.
So one of the things to do is be very well prepared when they go to auction. And the first thing, of course, is to make sure you can get the money from the banks that you want. Don't leave it to the last minute, because when you do that, it causes all sorts of problems.
And a bit of stress, I guess.
Absolute stress. I mean, for example, the banks are taking up to 10 days to process an application.
Wow, okay.
So, you've got to be well prepared and get things going really well. So it makes sense right at the beginning to get hold of your mortgage broker, chat to them and say, right, I'm looking at going to auction and perhaps getting a home, and we can then take you through exactly what you're going to need to get pre-approval. And we'll then approve you for the absolute maximum that you can possibly get. And that's critical, because at auction you might need to go there. You might need to win that house, you might need to push it all the way through to getting the absolute maximum. So understanding that is critical. And every bank is different, so we will actually go to the bank that's going to give you the most for that pre-approval. So that's the first thing I would do is make
Okay.
sure we can get the money. And the second thing is to make sure that you get a little bit of auction training, a little bit of knowledge of what's going on in the auction space.
As a bidder, how to bid at auction.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yep.
So Ray White, I understand, runs some very good active auction seminars. You can go along to those. You can get personal auction training.
Sure.
But even your mortgage broker will jump in and help you at that point and show you how to bid at auction. One of the problems is buyers just seem to freeze at that moment of actually committing at an auction.
Which will be the pressure again, isn't it? But,
Yeah.
you know, look, I'll talk to a buyer just before an auction and they'll tell me it's their first auction.
Ooh.
And they've had no training, and I'm thinking, how are you gonna win this? Why are you taking a risk on the house you love and you want?
Absolutely. And you know what they need to do is get some auction training, understand the psychology of what's going on at the auction
Sure.
process, understand how to win the auction, because there is a method of how to do that, and then go to some auctions, go and
Yeah,
watch
yeah,
and
absolutely.
see and understand and get a feel of the different auction techniques.
And you take somebody along as the broker so that they are very confident by the time they get to the target property?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the other thing for people to do is to make sure that they've understood their marketplace really
Yeah.
well.
Yep.
You know, a lot of people still don't know what prices should be on the market, what houses are going for. So what we can do is a comparative market analysis for them and
Great.
show them
Okay,
what's
fantastic.
being sold in the area and things like that.
Because the agent's doing that for the vendor, so the vendor understands where
That's
they
right.
should be. So if you can help some guidance for the buyer.
Correct.
And I wonder if that helps correct a buyer who tells me, oh, we've been to 12 auctions and missed out. It's like, well, I think your expectations are wrong, out of alignment with the market.
Yeah, either their expectations are wrong or they're doing something fundamentally wrong
Yes,
at the
yes,
auction
yes.
themselves.
Yep.
I've spoken to buyers as well, and they've told me, look, we could afford the money, but we just didn't know that we were doing the right thing, and we just froze, and then someone else came in and the hammer just dropped, and before we knew it was all over.
And somebody else had it.
Somebody else has got it.
Daniel, thank you for that. If you're after that bit of guidance, Daniel's going to be a great man for doing that. Our team helps buyers there. Why do we do that? Well, you need to be good at the auction to win, and our owners have asked us to have buyers there that win. So feel free to make contact with Daniel.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thanks very much,
Thanks,
Ray.
mate.
Appreciate that.
Well, let's do something different, and this is for you if you are about to be a bidder at an auction, and you know most properties sell at auctions. The good ones always go to auction. So as a bidder or a buyer, you need to be ready to go for that method of sale. So let's just cover off a couple of tips, and I'll talk about the preparation, and then I'll talk about on the day when you get to the auction. Preparation is really, really important. You need to be confident, and to be confident, you need to have done the groundwork so that you are obviously ready to go. And I'll break that down just into 3 areas. The first one is the legals. So you need your solicitor involved. They'll check the auction terms and conditions. You might be surprised to know that those auction terms and conditions can be different between the different companies. So look at each one, and on each property, you're looking to see if there's anything extraordinary on the property that has been discovered and has been confirmed or announced at the auction, as in it's an extra clause. The other thing your solicitor is looking for, or your professional is looking for, is the title. You are a cash unconditional purchase. You're accepting the vendor's title. So obviously have it checked. They're then looking to see who owns it, but more interestingly, what is on the title, what interests are on there, what instruments are on the title. You can't do that. The agents even struggle to do it, to be honest. So the solicitor or conveyancing expert needs to do that for you. So legals checked off by your solicitor. The next one is your finance. And we've had some great brokers here on the program. They are then making sure that you can bid on a cash unconditional basis, firstly. Secondly, knowing exactly what your budget is. And I'm always going to say to you as a bidder, know your budget, and when you hit your budget, stop.
At 2,500,000, we've got it there. Call 3 times. First call at 2,500,000. Second call at 2,500,000. Are we all done? All silent. 10. Oh, it
Have
may be
control
worse.
then. I'll give you some
5,
mechanism
10.
around that and some thoughts around that when we get to that stage. So with your broker, checking that your cash are unconditional, that they're happy with you and they're happy with the property, and then checking that you know 100% of what your budget is. And if you need to, you can spend 100%. But when you get to 100%, you pull up and you stop. If you're out, you're out. You have to wait for the next property. Then the third one is that professional inspection on the property. And there, obviously, it's a builder. It may be another specialist. You may do a geotech, looking at that aspect of the property. Or, as you would know from listening to us, I would recommend a drug test also, depending on the property, but more so now, I think I'd do it on every property. I don't know who's lived in there. Maybe not the current owners. It might have been the owners before them. So I'm going to check that out every single time. If it's an investment property, it's an absolute must. So that's the drug test. On the building inspection, you'll do one that satisfies you. That's what's important. Owners will normally do one, will recommend they should do one, to make sure they're confident to take the property to the market. And as a salesperson, if I'm selling a property, if they're not confident, I'm not confident. And I don't want to be ambushed down the road and find out that there is a problem. So before we start marketing, say to the owners, get your builder's inspection done, make sure you're confident to come in to the market. Now that inspection is not there for the buyer to rely on. You've got to get your own. It is your due diligence. It's making sure you're happy with what the report comes in with. So make sure you've ticked those boxes. So leading in, 3 areas which are your homework or your preparation, legal, your finance, and also the builder's inspection, and tied in with that, the drug inspection in today's market, unfortunately. So that sets you up. Now on the day, and we'll cover off, and this will be the last part of my segment. So on the day, I'm going to suggest you do a couple of things that aren't natural to most people here in New Zealand. The first one is arrive early. So if we're operating here in Auckland, traffic is traffic. It's always Auckland traffic. So for the first time in your life, leave early, arrive early. Find a park. If it's in the city, that can be a nightmare. But even in our residential streets, we could pack the street out for the first time with so many cars, with so many people coming to the auction. So get there early, and then your heart rate's down, you're not under pressure, you're not under stress. Make sure you've got the energy. An auction for me, and I'm always making sure I've had something to eat and I had something to drink, and I'm planning that an auction, look, it might be done in 15, 20 minutes, but it might take an hour and it might take 2. And there's no way in the world I'm going to run out of energy. So for you, do the same. You're really going to have to spike as you go through this. So you've had something to drink, maybe you've had a coffee, you've certainly had water, and then you might make sure you haven't skipped a meal, so you've got to plan for this. And then beforehand, you might be healthy and do the fruit, but I'd suggest get a chocolate bar under your belt. There you go. Get a chocolate bar under your belt so that you've got the energy to think and perform at the auction. As far as where do you stand at the auction, I think this is critical. I see a lot of people sit at the front or stand at the very back. And if I'm in a house, they'll all stand on the back fence or they'll stand at the back of the lounge if we're inside. Don't do that. Here we go. Pick the side position. Don't be seated in the front, because if you're seated here and people are bidding behind you, you won't look back. I just know from experience. But you'll feel that I don't know what's happening. And then your brain starts to disconnect and tell you, we're losing control of what's happening here. Now, if you're at the very back of the room or the back of the house, you could be standing shoulder to shoulder with another buyer. And if that's the case, it might be hard to work out if I'm selling it to them or if I'm selling it to you. So where do I suggest you stand? Just on the side. Stand on the side, you can see the auctioneer, I can see you, I won't miss you, and if I'm selling to you, it's very clear, and you can watch the people at the back and you can watch the people seated. So there we go. I hope that's valuable for you as a buyer thinking about bidding at an auction. Do your preparation, and then on the day, some little tips to make sure you're in the right place at the right time. Thank you. Well, joining us now is John Howard. We work together down in Ray White Mission Bay down there on the waterfront. John, thank you for coming in, taking the time here today.
Pleasure, Wayne. Thank you.
John, I think what would be interesting is your career in real estate is substantial. It goes back a number of years. When did you start, John?
I started with United Realty in Pakuranga in 1995, Wayne. It was a family-owned business, and that's where I cut my teeth in real estate.
Okay, so 20 years ago. So you've seen some great changes. If you can roll back the memory to, say, 1995 or when you first started, What was it like in real estate back then?
Well, it was a lot different in so much you had, how do I say it, a lot of coffee drinkers in the office.
Okay, yep.
The cars were a lot more normal.
Yep.
In so much as the
So
successful
everybody
ones-
didn't have a Mercedes or
They
a
didn't
BMW?
have your
Okay.
Ferraris and Mercedes and BMWs,
Yep.
that's right. The mobile phones were a lot different.
But you still had mobile phones back
We
then?
had
Yeah, okay,
mobile
okay.
phones. I was
Yep.
in marketing before that, had a mobile phone since 91. So
Yep.
mobile phones were basic. They had the flip phone, black and white. Texting was about your lot.
Okay, yep, that's as sophisticated as the smartphone
As
got
it
at
got,
that stage.
absolutely.
Maybe a Motorola flip.
That's
Remember
correct,
that? Okay,
yep.
cool. Yep.
Had to have the latest one as soon as it came out.
And how about the way you did your business? As a salesperson, what did you do in the, bringing a property to market?
Well, some things never change, and most of it was still based on relationships.
Yep.
And that hasn't changed to this day.
Yeah,
Service
fantastic.
and performance,
Yep.
and generally doggedness.
Yep.
How did we bring a property to the market? One of the biggest tools in those days, and still remains for bringing property to the market, was open homes.
Okay.
Meeting people, pressing the flesh, getting to know them, contacting them, and looking at their property.
So still did the open homes,
Absolutely.
setting up, I suppose, back in the, now we've got professional photographers and copywriters who do a fantastic job. At that stage, were you using those, or what was the
Well, I'll
deal?
go right through the setup. Basically, Wayne, we'd get the core flow sign. We still had that.
Okay.
The
yep.
arrow. We had a wooden stake. We hammered the wooden stake into the ground, and in summer, I tell you, it wasn't fun.
It'd be pretty tough in
And a lot
Auckland
of
with the
those
ground
old ladies
solid.
couldn't
Yep.
do it.
Yep.
Then we stapled the sign on. So
Yep.
that's how we did it. That was the open home setup. We had a flag, much as we have today. So, yeah, no, that sort of thing hasn't really changed, except we've got a lot better equipment.
And did you write your own advertising?
Definitely. What I would do is we often took our own photos too. I'd write my own advertising on a
photos.
bit of paper,
Yep.
hand it to the front desk, get it done,
Wow.
and then proof it.
Okay.
Just like I do today, Wayne.
A little bit more sophisticated now. It
Absolutely.
arrives.
Absolutely.
It arrives. And now, if we think 20 years, what are some of those changes, memorable changes over 20 years?
Oh boy, oh boy. Well, obviously, I've seen probably 4 markets.
Okay, good.
Highs and
Yeah,
lows.
good.
I've seen
Yep.
the market of the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen the boom through 95, 96, 97. I've seen the crash after 97 and the carnage
interesting.
through to the early
Yep.
2000s. And
Yep.
off it went again up to
Yep.
2007. 2008, the GFC comes along.
Bang.
And now
Yep.
we've just had another one.
Yep.
Not another GFC,
Yep.
but another high.
Yep.
So we're about to adjust again for that. The changes have been mainly in market. A lot of people have come and gone. Technology's huge.
Yeah, big.
Obviously, huge technological changes.
So that's all kicked in now. We do a lot of work, and we always talk about this with database and working out where our clients are sitting. Just if we can touch on your area of expertise, where you are now focusing with your sales experience and adding value to clients.
Well, lately I've been involved in actually a reclad industry with the apartments we've been doing in LSE, which have turned out to be extremely successful. We've had a lot of success. I think we've done about 9 in the last 5 weeks, which is great. My passion is on the waterfront. I add a lot of value to the waterfront by getting heavily involved with the community on the waterfront. We have the stand-up paddle
Yeah.
boards, etc.
Yep. It's great
and
fun.
that brings value all the time. I'm Facebooking, putting out flyers, etc., talking to people about the value of what is Auckland's prime land.
Yeah, absolutely. Best market to be in. You're very, very well connected. I think you're down there before the sun comes up, walking Tamaki
absolutely.
Drive. We're all down there on Thursday on the boards on the water with our local activities. So anybody thinking about the area, not only are you selling the house, but you're selling the value of what you can do and why that lifestyle
It's
is
a
so
lifestyle.
fantastic.
Absolutely the lifestyle, Wayne.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
I think we both love it. I think we're both in the right place for that. John, you've been 20 years. I think if we stack up another 20 years, that'll be 2035. So looking forward to that. And at that stage, we'll be like the old Muppet guys on the
Absolutely.
On
Let's
this TV show.
see how we're looking then. Eh?
Fantastic, John.
Thanks, Wayne. It's been a
Thank you very
pleasure.
much. Well, thank you for being with us. I'm Wayne Maguire, and next week, join us again when I'll have more experts. And again, they'll share their advice on how to buy, sell, and have property success here in New Zealand.